for students who disagree.
Mr. Baxter, I guess I'm interested in what the nature of the rule you're asking for is. I mean, when you started, it was about, matters pertaining to sex. But as you've answered some of these questions, you've basically said, well, my clients have religious principles that conflict with what is being taught. And does it go that far? In other words, does it matter what the subject matter is? Does it matter what the age of the child is? Does it matter what the nature of the instruction is? If so, how does it matter? Or in the end, is what you're saying, when a religious person confronts anything in a classroom that conflicts with her religious beliefs or her parents, that the parent can then demand an opt-out?
It's really the latter, Your Honor, and that's exactly what Montgomery County allowed in its own religious diversity guidelines. Anything that violated a student's or imposed a substantial burden, in their language, on a student's religious or parent's religious beliefs, they had the right to opt out.
So this is a rule that applies as well to a 16-year-old in biology class saying, the parents say, I don't want my child to be there for the classes on evolution or on other biological matters which conflict with my religion. It would apply just as well to that.
We know that those don't happen very often because
But it would if there were.
Certainly, and schools there are laws, for example, in states that allow students to opt out of dissection because they don't want to participate in that. And there are schools across the country, Hawaii, which has a school district about the same size as Montgomery County.
And so that's a pretty broad rule. Let me ask what the next step of that is. Suppose there are things that, students opt out of, and then, the parents think it's just not really fair that my kid has to leave the classroom or has to put on, headphones or, has to otherwise be made to feel isolated. So the next challenge is really the class can't do this either. What would your position be on that?
Well, no student, Your Honor, has the right to tell the school what to teach or to tell other students what they have to learn. You would clearly run into problems in that situation.
But to the extent that this is a rule about people being able to access public education in a sort of equal manner, the parent might say, my child is not being able to access education in that equal manner because, he's made to leave the classroom or he's made to do something else that isolates him from the class. I mean, certainly that's an argument that we've often heard with respect to prayer and that people have accepted with respect to prayer, that it's kind of like not a sufficient answer to just say, don't worry, the prayer can go on, you don't have to be part of it. So I'm just wondering whether that's the next step here.
No, Your Honor, I don't think so because, of course, under the Establishment Clause, there are different rules, but under the Free Exercise Clause, we think that on strict scrutiny, those parents would always lose if they're trying to direct the school what to teach or tell other students what they must teach.
Okay, but you are suggesting, okay, so that's a straightforward answer. I appreciate that. But just to go back, and this was also a straightforward answer, which I appreciate, but in terms of opt-out, you're basically saying opt out for anything. It's really the parents that get to decide, assuming that their beliefs are sincere, right? It's really the parent that gets to decide. Doesn't matter the kid's age, doesn't matter sex, not sex. Doesn't really matter this whole idea, I suppose, of pressure or coercion. If just looking at a book would be in conflict with religious principles, that would be enough.
Well, and just to be clear, under Yoder, the court left open what would happen if there were kids who objected. But we know that these things, schools around the country already have these very broad opt-out policies across the curriculum. In Hawaii for anything controversial, in Arizona for anything that parents deem harmful. And we just don't find these kinds of cases or these kinds of burdens where parents are bringing extreme examples. Parents with kids really don't have a lot of time to be suing the school board, and they're looking for a reasonable